Cardinal Robert Prevost, a missionary who spent his career ministering in Peru and leads the Vatican's powerful office of bishops, was elected the first American pope in the 2,000-year history of the Catholic Church. The new pope addressed the crowd at St. Peter's Square for the first time as Pope Leo XIV. He offered a message of peace and dialogue without fear.
La pace sia con tutti voi.
Peace be with you all, dear brothers and sisters.
Fratelli, sorelle carissimi.
This is the first greeting of the risen Christ, the Good Shepherd who gave his life for the flock of God. I too would like this greeting of peace to enter your hearts, to reach your families, to all people everywhere, to all the earth. Peace be with you. Surprised, overjoyed U.S. tourists said that they hoped newly elected Pope Leo XIV would bring peace to the world.
I pray that he can bring everyone together and bring peace. There's so much unrest, and we just want peace for everybody to love one another and to have those feelings.
I think it's going to be a great thing for America to help bring Americans and bring peace to the world. So I'm hoping that he's going to help bring that about.
And bring everyone together.
We're very hopeful.
From the loggia of St. Peter's Basilica, history's first American pope recalled he was an Augustinian priest, but that he was above all a Christian, and above all a bishop, so we can all walk together. Prevost, a 69-year-old member of the Augustinian religious order, appeared on the loggia of St. Peter's Basilica, wearing the traditional red cape of the papacy, a cape that Pope Francis had eschewed on his election in 2013. Prevost had been a leading candidate except for his nationality. There had long been a taboo against a U.S. pope, given the geopolitical power already wielded by the United States in the secular sphere. But Prevost, a Chicago native, was seemingly eligible, also because he's a Peruvian citizen and lived for years in Peru, first as a missionary and then as an archbishop.
Donald Tusk is a politician who bows before German chancellors. No matter who is in power in Berlin, or what they might want from him. Yesterday, the day before the 80th anniversary of the end of World War II, the new German Chancellor, Friedrich Merz, arrived in Warsaw, which was almost razed to the ground by the Germans in 1939. And as a welcome, he heard these words from Prime Minister Donald Tusk. You know very well, this diplomatic decision about not pursuing reparations from Germany was made during the communist era. We didn't really have a say in the matter. We didn't decide it. Did Germany ever make reparations for the losses, the tragedies of World War II? No, but we are not going to ask for it. This is a matter to think about. Poland doesn't have to ask the Germans for anything. It's enough that they pay the bill for what they did during the war. Material losses have already been calculated under the Law and Justice government. They amount to 6.2 trillion zloty, or around 1.5 trillion euros. This includes destroyed cities, looted works of art, stolen property of individuals and companies. But instead of money that could have developed Poland, the Germans in front of the Bundestag have set up a stone of remembrance for Poland in 1939 to 1945. So let's summarize. He admits they owe us 6 trillion, but we won't ask for it anymore because it's a matter to think about. And what is there to think about? They destroyed half our country, murdered millions of people, burned the capital to the ground, and gave a third of our territory to Russia. For almost 50 years afterwards, we couldn't develop normally because we were under the communist yoke. And that's why the West has an advantage over us. And Donald Tusk said exactly what the German Chancellor wanted to hear on reparations. In fact, he repeated his words. As far as the legal issues in the context of possible reparations are concerned, they are over. But we are not going to ask for it. This is a matter to think about.
Temat reparacji już nie tylko.
The topic of reparations, it's no longer that it needs to be settled for the sake of simple justice, but without the settlement of reparations, Germany should not be able to count on any Polish government for proper, not to mention friendly, relations. The Law and Justice Party's government was firm in demanding from Berlin the payment due. The governments have changed, as have priorities. And they say they won't pay anything, despite the fact they have finished paying reparations to other countries. They have paid reparations even to some African countries, but they won't pay Poland because the Polish Prime Minister did so. This is a shame and disgrace that we ourselves relinquish something we owe to the next generation of Poles. The current and future generation of Poles also deserve security and development, and that should be a priority for the Prime Minister. But Donald Tusk not only renounces reparations, but also restricts big Polish projects like the Central Communications Port and the gas port in Świnoujście. The Oder River is not deepened on the Polish side, so that Polish commercial shipping does not compete with the Germans. Tusk also applauds the idea of pushing American troops and companies out of Europe to entrust security to Berlin and Brussels. This is a man who seems to be the resident of the German government in Poland, not the Polish Prime Minister. It is sad but true. All investments that were supposed to support the development of Poland are unwelcome to Germany, and thus are simply boycotted by Donald Tusk and his government. And one more thing, Muslim immigrants. They have turned the lives of residents of German cities and towns into hell, so Berlin has decided to shift the problem onto the Poles. German police officers are already dropping off unwanted newcomers from the Middle East and North Africa on the Polish side of the border, and this is just the beginning, as even German journalists admit. I would like to remind you that an election campaign is underway in Poland. Tusk cannot, right now, afford to officially accept the immigrants being sent back from Germany. He can't do it publicly. That is, we can soon expect an even greater flood of Islamic immigrants, because a weakened Poland, including on its eastern flank, is in the interests of both Germany and Russia. We are dealing with a very serious conflict of Polish and German geopolitical interests. But we also have a Prime Minister who has very good relations with Germany. Many Poles even think these relations are a bit too good.
This Thursday was a day of mourning at the University of Warsaw. The academic community is in shock. A defenseless woman who worked as a porter at the university was murdered. Wednesday, the campus of the University of Warsaw, a 22-year-old student, Mieszko R., of Polish origin, brutally murdered a woman with an axe. Nearby, classes were being held. In the beginning, we weren't sure if it was true. It was difficult for us to believe it. The attacker didn't stop at the woman. He also severely injured a university security guard who rushed to the woman's aid. It is not known why he carried out the attack. What is known is that he circled the campus for an hour beforehand. They write in our group that he was hanging around there for about an hour. Hey, a request from Dominique to watch out for each other because a suspicious person with an axe is wandering around the campus. The door from the hall, 403, is locked, so if anyone is late, please knock. Literally 30 minutes earlier on the study circle group. The warnings turned out to be justified. The 22-year-old was only stopped by a state protection service officer who happened to be nearby. Soon, the police arrived on the scene. The security guard was taken to the hospital in serious condition. His life is not in danger. Trial activities involving the 22-year-old student began this afternoon at the Warsaw Downtown North District Prosecutor's Office. He is to be charged with murder with special cruelty, attempted murder, and desecrating the body of the victim. Over a dozen witnesses were questioned, and CCTV footage provided by the University of Warsaw was secured. The video surveillance was visually inspected and was included in the investigation file. All these activities allowed us to formulate charges against the suspect, Mieszko R. The murdered woman was liked by everyone. This is a tragedy for her family. The 53-year-old woman had 3 children. The attacker is a third-year student. He had a reputation for being quiet and peaceful. It is said that this was no ordinary crime. According to witnesses, the attacker desecrated the body of his victim. questions have been raised as to whether this tragedy could have been avoided. It may seem that this could have been prevented. On the other hand, it is not uncommon that a murderer initially appears friendly and sane. What's quite interesting is that false information about the attacker appeared very quickly on the internet. It was claimed he was a Ukrainian citizen, which is false. It is not ruled out that this was an example of a Russian disinformation op which aims to drive a wedge between Poles and Ukrainians. Unfortunately, this is not the only tragic piece of information that has emerged in recent hours. In Ustka, a passerby spotted a drifting suitcase in a small river. Inside were human remains. The man was questioned. The case is being investigated by the prosecutor's office.
Day 1170 of the Russian army's three-day special military operation in Ukraine. Russian missile attacks claim more victims. As we predicted, the truce announced by Putin in connection with Victory Day celebrations in Moscow turned out to be a lie. Russian troops are attacking all along the front lines. Artillery shelling and bombing raids are continuing. In 7 hours and 46 minutes of the ceasefire, there have already been 3 attacks. I do not know what else there is to say. The facts speak for themselves. Russian promises have a habit of turning out this way. This also applies to Putin's supposed readiness for negotiations, a ceasefire and peace. Details of these talks have just been revealed by United States Vice President J.D. Vance, who, in an interview at a security conference in Washington, made it clear that the Kremlin was trying to impose its own narrative on conditions on both Ukraine and the United States.
So I wouldn't say that the Russians are uninterested in bringing this thing to a resolution. What I would say is right now, the Russians are asking for a certain set of requirements, a certain set of concessions in order to end the conflict. We think they're asking for too much.
This means one thing above all. Washington, and most likely Kiev as well, do not accept the conditions set by the Kremlin. It also implies that, contrary to the narrative of some of the US administration's critics, Trump does not intend at all to bring an end to the war at any cost. Ukraine's sovereignty is not on the table.
Ukrainians matter a lot. They're the other side. They're the other party, at least to the direct conflict. And we have to ask, what is the Ukrainian? What do they need in order to bring this conflict to a successful completion?
Washington also sees the turmoil on the geopolitical stage. It sees the game Moscow is playing. The Chinese president is in the Russian capital now for the Kremlin's Victory Day celebrations on the 9th of May. The Americans are well aware of the significance of such gestures by Beijing.
Last week, our soldiers captured the first Chinese citizens fighting on the front, fighting for Russia. As of now, we have information that at least several hundred Chinese nationals are fighting as part of Russia's occupation forces. This means Russia is clearly trying to prolong the war, even by using Chinese lives.
This completely changes how the game is played, as do certain surprising displays of force. This morning, North Korea fired a series of ballistic missiles. The details are being analyzed between Japan, the United States, and South Korea. One of the missiles flew about 800 kilometers at a maximum altitude of 100 kilometers. According to intelligence services, Pyongyang was putting on a show for its client. We are currently analyzing the background and intentions behind these launches. However, it is believed that the missile launches may have been intended to test the performance and flight stability of missiles intended for export. Most likely, these missiles will go to Russia. For months, Kiev has been publishing photos and footage of missile debris with which the Kremlin attacks Ukraine. An increasing number of them include missiles of North Korean origin. Less than 2 weeks ago, Pyongyang officially admitted that it is actively supporting Russia in the war in Ukraine. So far, the number of casualties among North Korean soldiers is estimated at about 4,700, including about 600 killed. This makes it clear that the Kremlin has not so much a problem with the army itself and conscription as with training them quickly and sending them to the front. It is much easier, for the right price, to invite allies from Beijing, Pyongyang, or even Tehran into the war. And this completely changes the rules of the game, which Washington may have to join.